This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Good evening, everybody. It is Saturday, August 7th, 2021. This is Greg Morton. This is the weekend update for Canslim Growth Stock Investors, brought to you by the Greenville Eastside IBD Meetup Group and the Stockyard Meetup Group, which are the two meetup groups that I co-organize and or organize. So as always, this weekend review is for educational purposes only, not recommending any stocks or securities to buy or sell, and all investing has substantial risk of big losses. So you want to learn first and only then invest. So this weekend, we'll look at the M factor, market review, and market direction. Then another big week of earnings releases. So we're still going to be on that roller coaster. What's the best adjective to describe this market? We'll talk about that. We still see some select growth breakouts working. We'll look at a couple of charts, follow up on some resources, and then tell you about upcoming as well as the prior meetings and some of the educational topics from those. So as always, the M factor, as Bill teaches us, is the most important letter in Canslim. And per him, to interpret, to not predict, we use three things in this order of priority. And this is kind of important, particularly right now. The action of leading stocks, actions of stocks we own, and the market pulse, distribution day count, price and volume on the indexes. And so we're going to switch to MarketSmith in just a second and look at the index charts. We'll also look at my Excel spreadsheet I use to help me track the market direction. And then as to stocks owned, we will look at the group teaching portfolio. So let's jump over to MarketSmith and get in the charts real quickly. And what we're going to see is that the indexes are still looking fine. They have for a while. Moving average lines are in the correct order, 10, 21, 50, 200. RS line sort of flattish, so not great there, but just no real big damage. Hasn't been under the 50-day. The market school model has the power trend still back on as we're trending above the 21-day moving average. And these are all going to actually be okay, except for the two small caps are the ones that look the worst. This is S&P 500 hitting all-time closing high Friday. NYSE right up there. Also Dow all-time closing high on Friday. Russell, here we see some weakness under the 50-day. We do not have the moving average lines stacked in the correct order, but fighting back and trying to get back above the 50. And the S&P 600, same thing, still stuck below the 50-day moving average, trying to get back above it and get the 21 and the 10 back up there in the correct order. But the bottom line is the indexes are sort of a calm sea, but there's a lot of turmoil underneath that ocean. And so that's what we're struggling with, and that's why it is a difficult market still right now. So if we look at my coloring book, the main thing is distribution day count per IBD. We have 5 on the NASDAQ, 7 on the S&P 500, so fairly high count there, and 5 on the Dow. This is our 25-day window, so we will have some drop off this week due to the time rule. We'll use 1 on the NASDAQ and we'll lose 2 on the S&P 500 in the coming week and 2 on the Dow. My buying versus selling day count, I only have 9 buying days in the last 25 days and 11 selling days. So that's still flipped to the wrong side. We had some MMTS this week flipping down to yellow and red, but then back up to yellow and then even back up to green on the Dow. And this is not a fast signal. So for it to flip back and forth like that is a little bit unusual and reflective of some of that underlying uncertainty. We did have some breakouts this week. Some are just, MRVI. It's looking good. We'll see if Square can do anything. Actually, it was here on Thursday. So we'll just watch those. But these were Canslim stocks this week. So we are seeing some setups. We are seeing some breakouts in true Canslim stocks that have both earnings and sales. I do not underline them and put them down as breakouts if they're losing money, because they're missing the C and A. So these are Canslim stocks for me to put them on here. Most all of them will have at least 25% earnings and sales growth in the last quarter, if not more. So that's sort of where we are there. And if we flip over to the group teaching portfolio, which we'll talk about in more detail at our next meeting, tough week, didn't make any progress. Let's see, year to date, we're up 12%, improved a little bit at the end of last month, so nothing to really write home about. And we're about 78% invested on a cash basis, and standard position size is 60,000. So there's a couple that are full, and then Dexcom is an oversized position because it gave an opportunity to add. We had actually five last week that had earnings reports because we exited DT, Dynatrace, at the profit goal. So it's sort of nice. None of these got gap down, didn't get hammered. Some of them just went sideways, and that's fine. And then Dexcom gapped up when it had earnings recently. And then maybe there were just two or three last week. Some of these were I guess maybe the week before. And then we have two coming up this week, Docs and Figs. So decisions will have to be made on those per the cushion rules, and we'll see what happens with those. So go back to the presentation. Big again. All right, so we went through all that, covered that. General notes, still seeing some watch list candidates in some growth sectors, so that's good. There's still things in the oil and minerals and metals too, and financials that are, or banks perhaps, that are setting up, which is not our traditional growth sectors, but we are seeing some in the traditional growth sectors. Recent breakouts, still a mixed bag, AMD, Line, BNTX, these are behaving, working well so far. But there's some others that are struggling, and we've also had some gap downs on earnings. Select IPOs are acting well, well, at least for a day. Zoom Information, and actually acted bad by the end of that breakout whipsaw day. Distributions up there, as already mentioned, 5 on the NASDAQ, 7 on the S&P 500, and just have the MMTS downshifting and upshifting on different indexes this week. And the buying selling day, still a seesaw, and unfortunately more selling days than buying days in the last 25. So that's some of that under the surface turbulence that I was talking about. Still a stock pickers market, narrow leadership. Make sure you're doing a weather report, not a weather forecast. No way to predict. And for the last 3, maybe 4 weekends now, I've talked about driving the car. It's a time to be easy on the gas, easy on the brakes, or coasting. It's clearly not pedal to the metal, and it's clearly not lock down the brakes either. And of course, we're about 77% invested, as I showed you. This last week, still, I'd say light accelerator at best, and things don't improve soon. Some of the growth stock trade, maybe pull over for a rest stop break. I don't know. So still cautiously optimistic. Again, the week ahead is important. Just want to be super disciplined with that watch list process. You'll find the Michael Jordans to be in your portfolio. And then there was sort of a light bulb moment that I really liked this week from Jim Ropel. He was on the IBD podcast. It's about an hour long. You absolutely positively should go listen to that if you've not. He's always great to listen to. He's a Canslim hedge fund manager. I mean, using the Canslim style. It's not a Canslim fund. It's his hedge funds. But he just followed Bill O'Neill around the country and just gobbled up Canslim and Bill's teaching for years. He even said this week, hey, the magic pixie potion in all this is tremendous earnings growth and liquidity. And of course, he's running big money, so he certainly has to have liquidity. He talked about this week how this is a difficult environment for him. So we know if Jim's struggling with all his experience and all his discipline, going to be tough for us. He talked about how they wear you out or scare you out. This is one of those wear you out environments. Oh yeah, I said this, earnings beats plus liquidity is what we're looking for. And he also really emphasized, hey, follow the system. Don't compromise your entries. Only go for the best of the best. And if you're not getting your pitches, don't take the bat off the shoulder. Sometimes we have to be just patient and wait for the right environment rather than getting chopped up to death. And then he said, it's a mushy market. And so that was a great light bulb moment, because that's a great description. I mean, I've been talking about it being kind of trendless back and forth, sort of more distribution dominant than accumulation dominant. Mark Minervini talks about it as a hard penny environment, but Ropel, I just thought this was the best adjective I've heard in a long time, just a mushy market. Stuff starts acting well and then it fails to get any traction. It's just slopping around. So the breakouts are happening. They look good when they happen, and they're just struggling to make progress a lot of times. So that was really a great description. And he talked about sometimes you have to just step aside and wait till it's not mushy. So not appetizing right now, very soft. Very little is really working very well, but then there are some that are working very well. Breakout struggling to get traction, and sort of in my mind, this is just as tough as a trendless market, maybe even tougher, because the indexes are at new highs and you feel this pressure. I got to be in there. Clearly, we are in an uptrend with these indexes hitting new highs time after time. But there's just so much rotation under the surface. So coming up this week, we're still in earnings seasons. There's a bunch this week. I haven't gone through them all. There'll be 600 or 700, I guess. Coin, I know, is coming. Disney, sort of a bellwether. Celsius Beverages is one that has been showing some growth. FIGS reports, stocks reports, those are both new IPOs. So again, question is, are there viable gap up entries? And are there possible add-on buys on stocks that one owns if they have a continuation gap or viable gap up on earnings? So let's go over to MarketSmith. I just put some miscellaneous charts in here and have some that have been in there. NVIDIA, clear leader, been working, it hit the profit goal, could have taken profits. Let me get back to the daily. Could have taken profits at that profit goal, and that's what we did in the group teaching portfolio. And then on the weekly chart, we've seen that with earnings about 11 days away, it's actually set up a new little flat base up here. So you got 14% deep, 5-week flat base. So that one's been a leader and has actually set up again. Dexcom has been up 12 of 12 weeks, gapped on earnings, went to all-time highs here right after it broke out of this really big, long basing area that finished up with this 26% deep cup. So we'll see how it does. We're going to talk about it at our next meeting. Got a lot of institutional sponsorship in there, and whether this maybe has the potential to become a true market leader. Aventor, again, many weeks with 7 or 8 out of 9 weeks in a row. Lots of blue bars. We're still in the dog days of summer, so we're not seeing as strong a volume as we'd like to see. RS line going to new high. Canslim numbers over here on the left. Snap had a gap up breakout. Yep, here, trying to hold it. So we'll see how that big liquid one does. Twitter, tried to break out. I think you can see it on the daily better. Yeah, sort of above a horizontal trend line, and then it's pulling back, volume's drying up, so maybe it's forming a new handle area. It did come down under the 21 day, so a little something to keep an eye on. DT, I mentioned this when we had it in the group teaching portfolio. It came right up to the 20% profit goal. I think it was like 19%, and I just stepped in and sold it because I did not like the deceleration in earnings. And so I'd already made the decision, hey, that one gets to the 20% profit goal, it's all gone. So we can look at that and talk about it in more detail at the next meeting. Big liquid leaders are fine. Microsoft, Google, just keep plugging ahead. Facebook, trying to hang up there, obeying the 50-day, hit the 20% profit goal. AMD, clearly sort of the leader in that sector, looking good, actually hit the 20% profit goal. And some people might use the 8-week hold rule. I've done a video on that it's on the Stockyard YouTube page, sort of explaining that in more detail. It's a lot more than just going up 20% in 3 weeks. So watch that if you want to. And then FIGS, this is a new IPO. It has earnings this week. We've had this one in the group teaching portfolio. We've exited. We had a profitable trade, and now we're watching to see if it sets up again. This is really, I can't remember what it is. Oh yeah, it's a day 22 left side high right in here. So I view this as a new IPO base. Came right down on top of the prior pivot, held support, fantastic fund ownership. For a new IPO, you've got the big three in there: Lord Abbett, T. Rowe Price, New Horizons, and Will Danoff at Fidelity Contrafund. So that's really strong. And in fact, if I open up the fund ownership panel, it's got another 4 of my funds in there. If you sort it by A+ ranked funds, I think it has over 50 A+ ranked funds. And if you sort them alphabetically and go down and just look at the Fidelity list, it's got a whole page of those. So this is a new IPO, fairly liquid. I think the 10-day average volume is about $40 million a day. So, and it has earnings this week coming up on Thursday. So because it had been a profitable trade before, we scaled in just with a pilot sort of size position in the group teaching portfolio, and we'll see if it can build the right side and if we have enough cushion to hold those pilot shares through earnings Thursday after market close or not. So we'll watch that one closely this week. So I think those are all the ones that I put in the list just to show you some leaders and some things to keep an eye on. So if we'll go back here. All right, we looked at that. So our next regular monthly meeting, these are the big 2-hour meetings, will be August 17th, 2021, 7 p.m. Eastern time. They're all recorded. So if you sign up, you get the recording and the slide deck and the opportunity to attend live, but you don't have to attend live. There'll be about an hour and a half of educational material and 30 minutes of Q&A, chart review, that sort of thing. So we'll look at the impactor, look at some watch list stock, look at some recent IPOs in the IPO market, stock the groups picked, and then the educational topic, really going to look at the cushion rule, holding through earnings, and a new alternative perhaps rule to use instead of just a straight cushion. So we're going to talk about that in detail, and we're going to look at it on how that worked out with some positions in the group teaching portfolio this earnings season. So if you sign up for the August meeting and you're a first timer, I send you a courtesy copy of the July meeting and recording. So here's what we covered. We walked through the whole IBD newspaper in detail, how I use it in a weekend routine. And then we did a brief review of the Bible Gap setups and the rules for those and the setup that sort of I prefer. And then you can go to my YouTube page, which is where you're watching this video, so obviously you went there, but there's some other ones on there. There's the one on the certainty hold rule, and then also I believe it's the May meeting. I loaded a whole meeting up there just so people could see kind of how we run those and what I cover, and it was on the IN Canslim. So if you scroll over, you'll be able to see that. I can't do it since this is a slide. And then prior meetings, educational topics we covered. The green ones are the ones that people are most interested in. Spent a whole 3 monthly meetings covering how to write a set of sell rules, different trading zones on the MarketSmith chart. And by the time we went through all 3 of those, we looked at my sell rules at the end, and you should have been able to write your own set of written sell rules, which is what you need to do. I've also done one on complete weekend routine, and there's also one May of last year on sort of Canslim trading. A to Z, and actually talked about Dexcom back then as a possible true market leader. Turned out not to be at that time, so we'll see if it's come back around or not. And then you can watch my interview that Richard Moglen did a couple weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, and talked a lot about IPOs and the IPO base in there, as well as Canslim resources, that sort of thing. And we were talking about FIGs and docs even a couple weeks ago. So questions, contact information, 2 meetup sites, the Greenville East Side IBD meetup site. You can just go to meetup.com and search for these. That's the main one that I run with IBD. It looks like this. And if you go to the More tab and message boards, the first 2 pinned posts are for me, and there's tons of links, like the group teaching portfolios linked in there. I upload it each weekend. The coloring book, I'll link a new one each weekend. Just a ton of resources, checklist, videos on Canslim, a lot of stuff in those top 2. So if you just click on it, you can see that, and there's a description of what all is in there. So if you have any questions that I didn't cover, you can email me, you can follow me on Twitter or ask questions on Twitter. And then again, if the videos are helpful, just subscribe to the Stockyard page, make sure you like those, and hopefully there's some good educational content on there. So that's it. I hope you have a great weekend routine. Earnings season will be wrapping up soon, the middle of the month. And so then we'll see how things go after that also. And then in early September, hopefully all the traders will be back from vacation on Long Island and out in the Hamptons. And maybe we can get away from the dog days of summer volume. So that's it. Hopefully we'll see you next weekend. Have a great one.